In the next few modules, as we begin talking about modern American sports in the 19th century, we're going to find ourselves spending a lot of time in New York City. And I wanted, in the last mini lecture in Module 2, to say a few things about why that is. Before the Erie Canal goes through in the 1820s, New York was an important city, but it was not wildly greater in importance economically or culturally than the other major North American port cities of Boston, Philadelphia, and perhaps Charleston, South Carolina. But the construction of the Erie Canal and the creation of a large internal marketplace where the Atlantic Ocean connects to the Great Lakes, connects to the Ohio and Mississippi River valleys, really made New York City the national front door, made it more important in influence and in economic power than the other major cities on the East Coast. And this helps explain the amount of time we'll be spending in New York City when we talk about the emergence of a variety of forms of sports and recreation. New York became the largest marketplace for goods, services, entertainment, and culture, not just because it was itself a large city, but because it was well within this larger national marketplace. New York City grows in population enormously between the 1820s and the Civil War, both because of migration from countryside to city and because of migration from Europe, especially migration of Irish immigrants in the 1840s and 1850s. And so a lot of the social and cultural transformations that we talked about when we talked about the transformation of American manufacturing, you see on the streets of New York. And a lot of the cultural developments that first take place in New York, particularly in the culture of sport and recreation, wind up being enormously influential in the rest of the country. In particular, we will find ourselves spending a lot of time in the Bowery, which is now the Lower East Side of New York City, which was the most significant working class recreational neighborhood in the city in the 1820s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. This was where the changes in the workplace had the most obvious impact on the lived geography of the city. This is where immigration to New York City had the most short-term social and cultural impact. And it's actually kind of interesting how many different aspects of American sport and entertainment culture, if you're interested in the early history of them, you wind up in the same few blocks of New York City in the 1830s or 1840s. We'll see some specific examples of this when we talk about prize fighting in the 1840s and 1850s, and we'll see a variety of other examples of this as we move throughout the semester. New York City was a place with a vibrant and occasionally violent public political culture, and a place where we will frequently encounter men in public making statements of identity based on what kinds of organizations they join, what kinds of sports they play, who they vote for, what kind of people they associate with. And we will also see other Americans unhappy with those associations, unhappy with those recreational patterns, trying to come up with new forms of social power to counteract those new developments. And so we will spend a great deal of time talking about the public culture of New York City. And many of the changes we will discuss took place in other American cities at more or less the same time. But it's not an accident that many of them happened first in New York, or that many of these developments in New York had a wide influence on the rest of the country in the first half of the 19th century.